Hey guys, first Regardsman here, and today I'll be talking about the biggest problem of Space Marine 2 Siege Mode currently, and what needs to be fixed in patch 10.0, or at the very least, year 2. Now, Space Marine 2 Siege Mode came out around the beginning of July. It has been plagued with poor performance and bugs, and unfortunately, the greatest of these bugs, the fabled N2 error code, is still a huge issue, and I would go as far as say it is the biggest game-breaking issue in the entire game, at least for Siege Mode. And if you're unaware what the N2 error code is, it is a server stability issue, a server disconnect problem, where at any point in your Siege Mode run, it doesn't matter if you're at like waves 1 through 5 or like 30 plus, you can just get randomly disconnected. You will see a red bar appear in your upper screen corner, and you'll be sent back to the battle bars with like no progress saved. It is horrendous. It makes the game feel awful, and in the case of most players playing Siege Mode, if they get up to like wave 30 or something on like normal or hard, they're going to see this code, they're going to see the error pop up, they're going to kick back to the battle bars, and they will never play the game again, or not want to play Siege Mode for a very long time. Because a Horde mode, the main purpose of these modes in general is to push the highest waves humanly possible, or the highest waves you can with your friends and have fun, but nobody wants to play a Horde mode where there's like a looming threat of you getting booted back to the lobby at any given time, especially if you're trying to push like a super hard run and get to like wave 40 plus and things like that, because every single wave 30 plus attempt in Space Marine 2 Siege Mode history has run into this issue at some point in like their multiple attempts. And what I mean by that is, over the course of days or weeks that people are trying to do this, people have been consistently booted back at some point between wave 30 and 40, and it feels terrible. It took me, Zambit, and 4-4 like 5 attempts to actually push past like wave 35 without getting disconnected, not even dying, just not getting removed from the game or running into like an invincible lictor or something. Things like this feel awful, and honestly, my enjoyment of Siege Mode has been greatly diminished because of this. And to be honest, Siege Mode in general was kind of a false advertisement, because Saber Interactive talked about this as an endless wave mode for the longest time, and as of the PTS to now, there is still a timer in this mode. And the reason there is a timer in Siege Mode is because Space Marine 2 literally cannot handle this many enemies without crashing eventually. They said that at some point in time they might be able to fix the timer entirely, but when you advertise your mode as an infinite wave mode, as an endless wave mode, it's not really endless if there is a guaranteed endpoint with a timer. And if you're going to make a Horde mode, you should probably have your Horde shooter be able to support, as many enemies as you need for a Horde mode in general. Like, can you imagine if Darktide released Mortis Trials and said it was going to be infinite and then popped out with like 10 waves only? People would have flipped, because at the end of the day, endless mode is an endless mode, and this is simply not an endless mode. Now, out of my own curiosity here, I did look back through the old Steam posts for this game to see if this code was a problem, and apparently 75 million years ago, in December 21st, 2024, in fact was. We have holding these alligators down that's saying that error code N2 can't connect to the servers. I got the game yesterday and haven't once been able to connect to the servers. It's giving me an error code N2. There's nothing wrong with my internet, and the other games I own work just fine online. I'm getting very close to the 2-hour refund windows. This has been a problem since around launch, if not launch itself. Server stability at the beginning of Space Marine 2 was a huge issue, and it still kind of stayed that way. Patch 7.0 and 6.0 had some pretty poor launches, but the N2 error code disconnecting people after hours of Siege Mode has been the most egregious in my opinion, because operations, they run pretty well, but Siege Mode being the biggest time commitment of all modes, also having this error is a huge problem. And the interesting thing here is people talk about this December 21st, January 30th, then we have February 3rd here, and then suddenly we time skip like a fucking anime all the way to August 15th, where engineer here says, I just wasted 1.5 hours playing the Siege Mode because of this. It's still an issue as of the day of writing this. Internet works just fine, and other online games don't seem to indicate that my connection is weak. It wouldn't be as big of a headache if I were able to collect my XP or automatically join back. Love the game, but the constant crashes actively discourage me from playing. And this is the fundamental issue here, is that people are willing to forgive balancing problems in games. They're willing to forgive poor mechanics like enraged enemies, and people may not like dying in absolute difficulty and stuff like that to stun locks, but most people don't flat out quit What will make somebody flat out quit though is if the game is unplayable, and sacrificing somebody's time for like 1.5 hours and then also deleting their progression from that time spent is horrific. This is like the worst possible scenario for your game. People will leave because nobody wants to commit to a mode that takes 2 hours to complete at the highest level, if not 3 hours, because let's say a Wave 40 run can take upwards of 4 hours at times. And the idea that you can just have all of that progress vanish into thin air, no one's going to want to commit to that. And it's a really, really big problem for your game. And we still have people here saying, like Jeremiah says, this is still a problem. Twice today, I lost almost 2 hours playing Siege mode, only to get disconnected because of this error. So, I feel for these people. This has also happened to me. And Valve actually shut down this whole community thread here because they said, this thread was quite old before the recent post, so we're locking it to prevent confusion. Because N2 error is such an ancient issue that it's popped up its ugly head once again. Now, this brings me back to the Year 2 battle plan that Saber Interactive put out about a week ago, talking about their patch 15 release of a new Siege mode map. So they are planning to support Siege mode going forward, which I really hope they would be. But if they don't fix this N2 error code by the time of a new Siege mode map or the poor performance, I feel like people are just going to riot. And to be honest, I'm more so looking forward to modes like the stratagems here they talk about, that stratagems are a completely new PvE game mode, unlike classic operations, where there are only 2 difficulty modes, normal and hard, just like the Siege mode. And what makes this new game mode different are the various battlefield conditions, which will change every day and week and make each operation completely different from what you're used to. Because dynamic events like this, on top of other options like operations, are just great for a game's longevity. And I feel like Siege mode kind of missed the mark on that, because having only one map and waiting for what is basically going to be a year for another one, people are going to be tired of Siege mode. And I think that's why they're doubling down here on new PvE missions, because we're getting 4 new operations presumably here before we actually get any new Siege content from the looks of it, on top of a new class. So it seems like they're putting Siege on the back burner for now, which does kind of suck, because I do like the fundamental idea of Siege mode. If they did add in things like stratagem modifiers to Siege mode operations, or excuse me, Siege mode gameplay, that would be pretty damn cool to me. But it does seem like they're really doubling down on this whole new accolade store instead, and hopefully we'll see a bigger expansion to Siege mode in maybe year 3. But Siege mode, it does seem like that Saber Interactive kind of knows that the biggest and most popular thing in their game currently is the operations, because it's just less of a time commitment, and they're really doubling down on things like that. And stratagems is far more of an expansion on the operations than it is anything related to Siege mode. And potentially stratagems could be harder than Siege mode while also having less of that time commitment, which I think is a pretty damn good thing. And this brings me to the final thing I want to talk about here, which is a community poll I put out a month ago asking people if they preferred Space Marine 2's operations or Siege mode, and why. Now, about 10,000 people voted in this community poll. Obviously 10,000 people is not totally representative of every single player who plays Space Marine 2, but I would assume at least 80% of these people have played Space Marine 2 for over 2 hours. And of the 10,000 here, 72% said they preferred operations and 28% said they preferred Siege mode. And I think this post here from unknown9427 sums up my thoughts pretty well. He says that operations have a lower time commitment, cooler levels / environments, interesting dialogue, story integration, better performance, more experience for time spent, and Siege has more enemies and more crashes and disconnects. And it is really tragic that crashes and disconnects are what 99% of players remember from Siege mode these days, and the poor performance, especially on consoles, is a pretty huge negative. And on the note of console performance, for the love of God, Saber Interactive needs to add in an FOV slider for them, because there's no reason not to have that. But yeah, this really does sum my performance here, or my thoughts here, that operations are just a superior mode currently in Space Marine 2. I do think that is why they are doubling down on things like stratagems and these new upcoming PvE missions. They'll probably put stratagems on them as well, because basically every single new PvE mission we get is going to be a new map to add stratagems to, so it's going to be doubled up content, and having weekly and daily stratagems to work through for really dedicated teams or just people trying to have fun, that's pretty good for a game's life cycle. So I am looking forward to that. But hopefully Siege mode does not get left behind entirely, because I do enjoy the difficulty of Wave 30 plus Siege. But man, playing through that and having the air of disconnect hovering over you at all times does suck. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you like Operations or Siege Mode more? What do you think is the biggest game-breaking issue in the Space Marine 2 game currently? And as always, if you like content like this, subscribe for more, and take it easy. Thanks for watching. Bye.